person's disposition, don't we? We'll say, oh, he or she is always that way. They've been that way since they were teenagers or whatever. They just like to complain. But we're going to untangle some of this deceptive thinking today and throw the responsibility back on ourselves to move beyond this whole thing. But here's the question. When you feel sick or not right or have a health challenge, do you automatically try to retrace your steps and wonder where you could have possibly picked up this condition, aka the flu or cough or whatever? Well, I did that. I just did that recently, which kind of got me on this whole message. You know, it's been probably 6 or 8 weeks ago, I had that little cough that some people were having, but it kind of made you feel lethargic, you know, and it kind of, cough would just kind of come on you. And I started thinking, who gave that cough? You know? And then, of course, if you've been around, you've seen my vampire eyes that I've had a challenge with, the red eyes that I've had for 4 weeks now. But this morning, thank you God, they're doing much better. I don't know what they look like now because I haven't looked in the mirror, but the thing is, I went through the whole thing of, you know, the first week they told me I had pink eye. So I was thinking, where did I get that pink eye? Did I pick that up at the hospital or the rehab hospital when I went and visited congregants? Did I get it at that run-down daycare we went to look at that was a possibility for a place for the church? And they had all these grimy old toys in there, and it was like, it looked German-fested, you know? And I'm walking through there, and I'm like, ooh, it was closed, thank you, God. There was no kids running around in there. But still, you kind of just knew it was like a germaphobe would not have been doing well in there. But I was thinking, maybe I caught it off of that, but I don't know how long the pink eye virus lives, you know? Does anybody really? So then the next week, the second week, you know, I realized, I went back to the doctor and said, you know, look, I still look like I could try out for Vampire Diaries, so this is not working. You know, I need to do something. And they said, oh, it's not pink eye, it's allergies. So I was like, oh, great. So then I, you know, the doctor visit, more medication, all of this. So, but I'm still putting it out there, and I'm thinking to myself, you know, I use that hand sanitizer all the time. I used it at the hospital. I used it, you know, whenever I'm around anything that I think is germy. Why am I still getting something? And then I said, well, maybe it's because I clean the restrooms every week. And then I said, nah, that can't be it. You know, I'm using a cleanser and everything. Then I said, no, it's the shopping carts. Except for the shopping carts at Publix, because I always use those wipes. You know, yeah, so I don't get any germs. But you guys are laughing and you hear how silly that sounds. But how many of us have done that when we've had something wrong? We thought Aunt Susie gave it to us, or, you know, the little old lady that started talking to us at the grocery store. We start thinking whoever gave it to us has to be out there. And we put it outside of us. And it's just so crazy because it's not something out there that is causing the problem. Our health, you see, is such a valuable thing. And if we take heed to the truth leaders that have gone before us, we must think beyond this kind of thinking. P.P. Quimby, I don't know how many of you know about him. Anybody?
No. Yes.
Diane does, because she's taking the class. History of New Thought. But P.P. Quimby was actually one of the first original thought thinkers who actually started looking at science and religion and spiritual understanding and really taking it more from a scientific viewpoint, actually. So he really would look at things and say, how can that be if this is so? He started putting that concept of causation into play as far as your spiritual growth goes. And he was told that he was suffering from kidney and lung disease, and the doctors weren't sure how long he had to live. Until he began the journey for spiritual truth, until he began that journey. And he met a man named Lucius, who was clairvoyant. And as many people, maybe even today, and the people back then that did not believe in clairvoyance, Quimby proved them wrong through Lucius, because he would talk to Lucius, and Lucius would come forth with these clairvoyant messages, and Quimby would kind of analyze them and make deductions from those. And Lucius could be around anybody and pick up, you know, messages from them. So that's how his clairvoyance came through. But what's really kind of fascinating is that through his relationship with Lucius, who was like 18 or 19 when he first met him, he actually started realizing that he had some ability for clairvoyance, which also made him realize that everybody has an ability for clairvoyance, that we all do. And we do. I mean, how many times have you driven down the street? We've used this one a lot, but you get the message, oh, go a different way. Or don't go that way, you know, you get up on it and then here's an accident, or here's the traffic's jammed up, or whatever. That's that intuitive clairvoyance messages that can come through you on a, and even from that spiritual aspect of ourselves. But here's what Quimby says about his own experience and the truth about science and comparing it to his own experience. He says, now, what is the secret of the cure? I had not the least doubt that I was as he, Lucius, had described. And if he had said, as I expected he would, because of course he's saying this because the doctors had all told him this, that nothing could be done and I should have died in a year or so. But when he said he could cure me in the way he proposed, I began to think, and I discovered that I had been deceived into a belief that made me sick. The absurdity of his remedies made me doubt the fact that my kidneys were diseased, for he said, in 2 days, they were as well as ever. Then he continues with, if he saw the first condition, which was illness and disease, he also saw the last, for in both cases he said he could see it. I concluded in the first instance that he read my thoughts, the thoughts that were in P.P. Quimby's head of disease and illness. And when he said he could cure me, he drew from his own mind, and his ideas were so absurd that the disease vanished by the absurdity of the cure. Yeah. And this was the first stumbling block, he said, I found in medical science. I soon ventured to let him examine me further, and in every case he would describe my feelings, but would vary the amount of disease, and his explanation and remedies also convinced me that I had no such disease, and that my troubles were of my own make. Now this is profound, because this is the basis for all original thought, as far as thoughts held in mind produce after kind. I'm going to talk about that in just a second, but the thing about makes it profound is that it does put it back on us, and it might rattle our cages a bit to think that we are the ones in control of our own health. But when he talks about the idea of the mind of Lucius, when he is in that state, is in that spiritual existence with the oneness of God when he comes forth with what he is saying. So that's, you know, kind of an awakening to us. And it might be difficult for us to absorb, because why would we be responsible for our health? You might be asking yourself. But if we look at it like we do the marketing, you know, we can go back to the commercials on TV that convinces us that cold and flu season is upon us, and that marketing convinces us of so many health issues. And you know what? Even in the 1800s, Quimby even said the same thing. He said that doctors and ads and stuff were making people think that there was something wrong with them, that people really didn't whine or complain about every ache and pain. They prayed about it, or they let go about it, and they just moved on. And but here's what he says. They make 10 diseases to one cure, thus bringing a surplus of misery into the world and shutting out a healthy state of society. They have a monopoly, and no theory that lessens disease can compete with them. And I love this because Myrtle Fillmore, co-founder of Unity, also has this that parallels that. Doctors, of course, judge by appearances, founding their opinions upon the study of effects, and drawing their conclusions from the outworking of mistakes the patients have made. You know, how many times have you gone to the doctor and you know that you did blah, 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 but you don't tell the doctor that? And they're trying to figure out what's wrong with you, and they make an assumption, but you haven't been totally truthful with them. So the assumption's probably not going to be correct, right? But if you're totally honest with them, then that gives them a little bit more clear way to find what they think is the cause of this effect. But you know, when we go back to looking at commercials, you know, they have these commercials on knee pain. Go out and get that, you know, cream to put on them to make your knees better, or take this nutrient or that nutrient. Or if that doesn't all work, then let's just replace the knee. I mean, that's what they're telling us. And then, or they push those ads, oh, we're all getting older. You know, we are all getting older. Okay, that's been happening since the beginning of time. But we're all getting older, so we need this thing or that thing in order to live a more vibrant and healthy life. And they sell us on all the additives that we need to put in our bodies to be who we need to be. But we need to stop looking at those ads and we need to look at something else. Can anybody tell me what you think these symptoms are? Symptoms start 2 days to 3 weeks after contracting the virus, with a fever, sore throat, muscle pain, and headaches. Typically, vomiting, diarrhea, and a rash can follow. Who thinks that's, know what that's, huh? Don't say that. You're not supposed to read ahead. Nurses, shut up. Doctors, shut up. Most people look at that, though, and say the flu, if you're not educated, right? But then if I add this, along with decreased functioning of the liver and kidneys, and add this, around this time affected people may begin to bleed both within the body and externally. And what I want to point out is, symptoms, when the doctors say you have symptoms, you might not have all those symptoms, right? How many of us have had vomiting and diarrhea? Did we ever think that we had the Ebola virus? No. But if you look at those symptoms and you start putting them in your head, you can see how easy it is to manifest the Ebola virus in your body if you start believing those symptoms belong to the Ebola virus. Do you see what I'm saying? I mean, it's the craziness. And it does freak us out because, we can easily be manipulated by those commercials or by what we're thinking is going to bring those symptoms into ourselves. Here's another one. The AIDS and HIV. The beginning symptoms, which commonly include fever, shivering, chills, mouth, dry cough, loss of appetite, body aches, and nausea, typically in connection with the sudden onset of illness. Hello, these were the actual description of these viruses. And don't get me wrong, I mean, that's all good and fine. But I know for a fact that I have never ever had AIDS or virus or Ebola, and I've had some of these symptoms. Haven't you? Yeah. And again, when we start putting that stuff outside of us, when we start thinking it's all that stuff out there, that virus, or maybe it's that condition, or maybe it's that condition, then we end up in that place where we can manifest that within ourselves. Now, don't get me wrong, because I think medicine is a divine idea and I love it. I mean, I think it's an important thing that we have had. We just can't always put all of our energy and thoughts and everything out there in the mix of the marketing that goes along with it. And I say, when you have the slightest doubt about your ability to heal, use the medication. Hold on a second. Let's see, is that the next one? Yes, it is. If you have but that's not where I want to be, so it's probably got a slide mixed up. When you have the slightest doubt about your ability to heal, use the medication, okay? Take the doctor's advice and do all the things you need to do to feel safe and secure. Because if in your mind you think that those are going to help you and that's what you need, then by golly, you need that. Do you see what I'm saying? And I know, I've seen the results of people that are in a state where they need the medication and people who don't need the medication, and I get that. But it is much better than doing nothing and living in fear and distress, all right? But I tend to think that if there's a birth defect or a mental disconnect that does not allow the body to function properly, then or maybe the person just can't see health and wholeness in their life. They can't see that. Then, that's where the power of the medical industry is all they have, and that's what they need in their lives. And don't get me wrong, because I have struggled in the past, I always say, because I don't want to claim it for me for the future. But I have struggled in the past of letting go and letting God be my health. I have a hard time sometimes saying, oh, I don't need that ibuprofen for my headache, or I don't need that, whatever it is. I still struggle with that, to totally turn to God all the time and allow God to be bringing forth that health and wholeness. And if we can go to that place, though, even part of the time, those are the baby steps we need to get where we're going. But we've got a little bit more, and to turn to God first, of course, for all of it. But we have a little bit more, I don't know why that's in there where it's at, because it's not supposed to be. Because, there we go. Slide us down. I know where Eeyore comes from, though. Let me go back to it, and I'll tell you what it is. Well, I don't know where I'm at. One more. Nope, one more. We're going back. Eeyore syndrome, anyway, is those people that sit around and always are negative about everything. You know what I'm talking about? I mean, no matter what you try to tell them or what you try to do or how you try to help them, they're still going to be in that Eeyore, that pessimistic, negative mood. They're going to be down in the dumps. They're going to be down on themselves. They're going to be down on everything. And those kind of people, you know, are the people that you need to really get that boost from God and say, hey, I got to change my thinking. I've got to be in a new place. I've got to change how I do things. Fillmore says this, every idea projects form. The physical form is the projection of man's idea. We carry the body in the mind. The body is the fruit of the tree of life, which grows in the midst of the garden of the mind. The body idea is grounded and rooted in divine mind. And we know what divine mind is, right? God. The body will be filled with a perpetual life flow that will repair all its imperfect parts and heal all its diseases. That's powerful. If we can be in divine, rooted and grounded in divine mind, that's allowing God to be in control, to allow God to be. Well, Quimby gives us a little bit more about his experience in this. He, Lucius, and this was his first experience with Lucius, then prescribed some simple herb tea, and the patient recovered. The doctor that Quimby had been seeing believed the medicine cured him. But I believe that the doctor made the disease, and his faith and Quimby's faith in the boy Lucius made a change in the mind, and the cure followed. Instead of gaining confidence in the doctor, I was forced to the conclusion that their science is false. And we know that Reverend Martha Judici, Unity Minister, coined this phrase, and I believe that this was probably the basis for this, for the law of mind action, which is thoughts held in mind produced after their kind. Whatever we are thinking is going to manifest in our lives. And mainly because Quimby continues with this, man is made up of truth and belief. And if he is deceived into a belief that he has or is liable to have a disease, the belief is catching and the effect follows it. Thoughts held in mind produced after the kind, or also known as cause and effect. You know, we know what cause and effect is, right? And how many times have we searched all over the place looking for the cause or the effect? Or maybe we have the effect and then we start searching all over for what is this effect? What does this effect mean? You know? And all the time we're searching out here, outside of us, instead of turning within to that Spirit of God that is in us, that brings forth all the answers, because God is all-knowing. So cause and effect is also known as causation, which is the relation between an event, the cause, and a second event, the effect, where the second event is understood as a physical consequence of the first. And other definitions for that are cause, or explanation, or the answer to a why question. And when we have something wrong with us, or we don't even know what's wrong with us, we start asking questions, don't we? We start asking those why questions. You go to the doctor, you go to the emergency room or whatever, they start asking those why questions. And we start trying to figure it out. And the causes could be vast and many. And the causes, though, could be right in front of us and we don't even know it. And you know what? The causes could even be something that is lurking within us in our subconscious from our past. Something that happened to us when we were little, something that happened to us as a teen, something that happened to us at birth. Any of those things could be causing an effect later in your life. And you have to be able to turn within to find those causes, because that's the only true answer you're going to find. Other people can tell you what they think it is, but that doesn't mean it's the true answer. You know the true answer, and God wants you to know the true answer. So, how do we do this? How do we find those answers from within? Well, Quimby says this: my theory teaches man to manufacture health, and when people go into this occupation, disease will diminish, and those who furnish disease and death will be few and scarce. You see, Quimby was talking about health from the idea of consciousness, from that consciousness of the oneness of God and the idea of what it all brings forth. And you know, yes, it was his occupation. He was a metaphysician. He went around and healed people, and most of the time people came to him. And you know what? He didn't have a doctorate. He didn't even have a college degree. He had never been to medical school, just like Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, who created their whole ministry around the idea of healing prayer. But we know how powerful healing prayer is. And they healed themselves in that, and they found ways to help others heal their diseases, their own diseases, through consciousness, through turning within to that divine mind of God and bringing that forth into your lives. Now, Myrtle wrote this, and it's powerful. There is no such thing as disease or an incurable condition. These activities, weaknesses, or abnormalities to which the medical profession gives name are but the effects of the God-given inner intelligence are the efforts of the God-given inner intelligence to deal with the conditions that the individual has produced by his failure to understand the truth, capital T truth, and to recognize himself as the perfect child of God and to live by the divine law of life. I mean, we said on those statements of truth, I am a child of God. And you claim that for yourself, but truly, do you claim it all the way in? Do you take that to the depths of your soul and say, I am a child of God? Anything that does not measure up to the Christ pattern of perfection can be changed. So anything that is happening in your lives that is not in that perfect Christ pattern can be changed. You know, Jesus came forth on this earth to show us the way to live, and we can bring that forth because He did it. He gave us the examples. He lived it in His life. We can live it too. Anything that the ideas of God mind expressing in the mind of man have not produced can be dissolved into the original nothingness by the understanding application of the power of spiritual thought and the resultant spiritual action, the cause and effect. And I love that line where it says, anything that we have produced can be dissolved into the original nothingness from where it came by understanding the application of and power of spiritual thought. That's huge. But how do we get to that place of understanding that spiritual thought where we're not thinking we need the Tylenol or the Advil or the knee pain pill or whatever? Well, we start with number one. We rid our thoughts of negative thinking. We deny any power that we have given to false things. We might say we no longer give power to thinking or saying anything negative about our bodies. How many people say negative things about their bodies sometimes? I bet you everybody's got their hand up on this one, or almost everybody. Anyway, or living from lack and limitation. How many people live from lack and limitation? Say, oh, I can't have that because I'm not good enough, or I can't have that because I don't have the money, or I can't do that because no, I have to sit in a chair and just be doing nothing. But we don't have to allow those negative thoughts to cobweb up our minds anymore. We can gently clean them away and refresh our minds. So when someone comes to us who has had a doctor diagnose his illness, we ask him to turn from the doctor's opinion and verdict and cease to think of the name he gave to the condition that existed at the time of the examination and treatment. The minute you name something, that's what it is, isn't it? Oh, I have the flu. You've named it. You're going to have it. You know, cross that out. I do not give any power to those words. We ask him to cast out the assumption that this condition would not be changed and done away with, just as one would refuse to hold to and to think of some unworthy and untrue thing that he might have heard spoken as he walked down the street. Somebody calls your name going down the street, you're going to look at that person like they're crazy, aren't they? But if we look in the mirror at ourselves and say, oh, God, what did you do to yourself today? I mean, we believe that stuff. And if we are a child of God, that is not how we speak to ourselves. It's blasphemy. It's blasphemy to God to speak to yourself that way. Myrtle continues, and I've got these numbered 1 through 7 because I got a handout for you at the end here that you're going to get with this. It's because it is a prescription. It is a prescription that Myrtle has, and I've kind of put some things in there for you to better understand it. No one who has awakened spiritually is seeing his threefold being in the light of truth would speak of disease as something of itself. He would not think for a moment that the mind was fixed in old race beliefs or errors, nor that his body was unresponsive to the spirit. So it takes us changing our thoughts and opening up in truth and seeing the truth of who we are. If we claim we are a child of God, then we've got to feel that in the depths of our soul, and we've got to know that. And we've got to move from that place. We have to believe and know beyond belief, without a shadow of doubt, that that's where we're at. And in this state of beingness, then we're ready for Myrtle's third thing on the prescription. He is to begin at once to rejoice that he is the offspring of God, that the life and the substance of his body and the perfect pattern of that life and body are gifts of God. Gifts that are in reality inseparably one with his own being and the very essence of God life and God substance and God intelligence. Can you claim that for yourself? Can you say that you are God intelligence, that you are God substance, that God life is moving in and through you, wanting to express?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. It is God's plan, to have the creation picture forth. Express God's ideas, qualities, and being. It is our purpose in being here to become conscious of and to express in our lives the true pattern and qualities of our Father and Mother. And if we are expressions of God, we can only express what? Goodness and perfection. People that say they are perfect, which Reverend Warren does all the time, and I used to get mad at him, but now I say, yeah, you are. Because if we start seeing that in ourselves, then we can see it in others. And if we start claiming that for ourselves and for others, what are we going to do? We're going to be shifting that consciousness of the world, and these wars, these silly wars and anger and fighting, even on our own streets, will stop. Because we will believe that we are all here together to come forth with that idea of God. And we need to realize that we've got to quit saying those negative things. And once we do that, then we can move and live and have our being in alignment with the oneness of God. And so we move to this. We know very well that God would not create a person with imperfections and shortcomings and disease. We give them the best instruction we have to offer, but if we are wise, we permit the spirit within them to develop the soul, and it may express their individual gifts. And this actually is probably one of the hardest ones for somebody to look at and say, what? And believe me, I've just been a couple days at the Children's Hospital, so I've seen some of these kids that have cancer and different stuff. And you think, how could somebody have disease or that? I had a sister that had Down syndrome. But I never saw her as being different. I just thought she was my sister and she was cool. But when somebody would say something, on the street, kids would call her retarded or say she's stupid or, why isn't she talking right? I just looked at them, what are you talking about? She talks perfectly fine. I understood her, And so we have to get beyond seeing whatever it is. Every person on this earth is put here for a reason. And it's our job to find out what that reason is for our own self, for our own growth, to move beyond whatever it is that we're thinking negative in our heads. Every person has the right to express how they are meant to express in that perfection of God. And it's up to us to accept it and to know that for the other person. And that's hard to do a lot of times, isn't it? Number 4, we wave aside the past mistakes and the untrue suggestions and fix undivided attention upon the Creator and the inner pattern of perfection. In this lies the success of this spiritual treatment. We bring all the mental attitudes in the center of consciousness and even the physical structures to this high place in mind where we see as God sees. And where we name all that is within us according to the patterns and uses for which these soul qualities and their outpicturing have been created. We all have seen people that have, haven't had the right body parts, supposedly. Maybe they were born without an arm, and yet they're successful. They do whatever they want to. I saw a little girl on, not little anymore, a girl on TED.com, no legs, and she was an Olympic gymnast. And come to find out, she had been adopted when she was little from Russia because, they reject anybody that's, not normal. And so she loved gymnastics from the get-go. And her idol was that Russian gymnast that was really powerful in the Olympics and stuff. Come to find out, it was her birth sister. Whoa. She found out later, and they got to meet. And it was so neat to see this girl that had no legs being a gymnast. And she called up her sister and she said, hey, I'm your sister. And they talked and everything. And she said, I'm a gymnast too. And she said, you've been my inspiration my whole life to be a gymnast, because I'd see you and I'd say, I want to be like her. And my dad got me on a trampoline, and we started doing flips and everything. And she said then, she goes, later, when my parents, found out more information about my birth family, they shared it with me. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that you were my sister. And she goes, well, why not if you were an Olympic gymnast and everything? And she says, what you don't understand is I don't have any legs. So we don't always know why we're put on this earth for what reason, or whether we have to have all the body parts that we think we have to have in perfection. If we look at ourselves as being perfect and that we are capable, we know that success is going to follow, don't we? So here's a bit more for number 5. We prayerfully consider all our living habits. Okay, this is back on us. You got to carry the sack. We prayerfully consider all our living habits to get a better understanding of their purposes and to know whether or not they are according with the divine law of health. We consider whether or not we are worrying or fearing anything. That means what we eat, what we do, what exercise we're having or not having, all of those things. Are they aligning with what we know to be the law of health? Because it's our jobs in this physical being to take care of this body and this perfection that we have been gifted with. 6, we're almost through. Whoops, we got a little bit more. We look back with conscious mind into the realm of subconscious or memory to determine whether there is anything that took place in the past that is continuing its disturbing influence through the unconscious expressions of mind. I talked about that a little bit. What happened in the past might still be lurking, causing a physical thing in your body. And you can work through that. Dr. Mary Ann at Billingsley Chiropractic, she does muscle memory work. And so if you've had anything that happened in you, it could be gearing up, tightening up, or causing a thing in your body, and you can actually work through that and undo that kind of thing. I don't know if you know about craniosacral work. Some of you might. Much of the habit side of life is made up of these past experiences and trainings. Many things we do daily are not consciously thought out, but are the continuation of something impressed upon us long ago. That's where we get our, this is my special treat. I'm going to have, and we got cake out there today. I know I shouldn't use this as an example. But this is my special treat. I'm going to have my cake today. Or, I used to love frosted animal cookies. They don't make them the same anymore, but, that was my special treat growing up. I would get to go to the store, and my mom would buy a box of frosted animal cookies, and her and I would hide them from all my 10 brothers and sisters. And we would share those, off and on whenever I'd clean the house or do something special. She'd give me one of those frosted animal cookies. I thought, it was my special treat. But how healthy would that be for me if I ate the whole box at one time? Not. You know what I mean? So we have to look at those kind of things. 6, we rejoice and remember that we have the God power to change conditions, the God love to express Christ-likeness, and we work lovingly and diligently with whatever we find in ourselves or our environment that falls short. So back again to us doing the steps we need to do to get to the place where we need to be. Keeping the attention centered in the Christ mind, we are able to see beyond appearances to the impulses of the soul. I love that, don't you? To the impulses of the soul. That's looking beyond somebody who doesn't have legs, or somebody who has, is got Down syndrome, or any of those kind of things. Where am I? We find this, impulses of the soul, which is always urging us in our efforts to make use of what God has given. Isn't that beautiful? To the degree that we let Christ be lifted up, in the same degree